Good morning. I want to spend a few minutes today talking about life, death, and cycles. People often ask me, Joseph, how are you so sure that there's life after death? And I often chuckle and say, well, we all do, don't we? It's fairly obvious. People say, don't be so ridiculous. How can you know this? If you knew this, then you'd be a rich and famous man. And I say, perhaps it's not that simple. Of course, we can't communicate with our loved ones that have passed away. And of course, people haven't come back from the afterlife sharing knowledge of life after death. Although there's some interesting near-death experience studies, I have to admit. But my answer to how I know there's life after death is much simpler, much simpler. Cycles are an integral part of the natural world, the human experience, the plant experience, the animal experience, and they go round and round. In our case, we can have positive or negative cycles within our own mental health and well-being. They can be positive cycles, such as when I have a good night's sleep, I feel productive and awake the next morning. When I have meaningful social connections, I feel a warmth and a sense of enjoyment. When I do really well at work, schoolwork, employment, I feel a sense of pride in myself and my work ethic. Some positive cycles. Some negative cycles, I notice when I'm stressed and anxious, perhaps I eat more unhealthy than usual. Fast food, Deliveroo, it's not something I pertain to, but that's a common cycle. Lack of sleep, leading to doom scrolling perhaps, or feeling anxious and stressed, leading to perhaps an alcoholic beverage or a cigarette. Positive cycles, negative cycles. And you may recognize and understand some of those yourself, and we'll touch upon in the second half of this video. Small phrase. Notice when, what happens next. Notice when, what happens next. Notice when I'm overtired, I wake up grumpy the next morning, what happens next. And we can use that psychological identifier to draw awareness to our own personal process. But let's not divert too much. How is it we know there is life after death? Well, I simply point to any arable field, and here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 beautiful wheat fields full of crop. It's quite dry this season, and if we look at them now, they're full of life, just like you're looking at me now, full of life. But in the winter time, these fields will be dead, bare and soil, the same as me. If you look at me in the winter time of my human existence, I will be dead, I will be bare, and I'll be in the soil. It's an unescapable fact of life. So how is it we know that there's life after death for the human experience? Well, it's the same way we know about these arable fields. If you look at me and if you look at this field behind me, we're full of life. Might be a little bit dry in this season, but we're full of life. And you take the same snapshot during the winter season. The winter season's every year for a field, and every 80 to 100 years for a human, if we're lucky. Yet, we don't know whether there'll be an additional human experience for me, for you, for our loved ones. But we do know that this field will have life in it again. So how does that work? Well, it's a cycle of life, a cycle of the natural world that's integral to the experience that we live within. Each winter, this field is dead, bare and soil. Each spring, it's drilled and sown. Each summer, the crops grow full, wheat, oats, borage, whatever it may be. In the autumn time, they are cropped, harvested, and in winter they are laid bare again. So when people ask me, how do you know there's life after death? Joseph, I simply point to the field and say, this field has cycles of life. and when the new cycle emerges, new life springs, and it's alive again. Now, the next question is often, well, yes, Joseph, but that's a field. That's nothing to do with a human. And the point I follow that with is, we as humans live on an entirely different temporal plane, a different time scale to the natural world around us. Perhaps similar to some animals in a sense. There's a lambing season of new lambs. The sheep grow older, they produce new lambs for the next season, and the cycle goes on. Maybe 10 years, probably shorter if it's a farm, but we can have sheep living longer than that. Next, we move to perhaps an arable field. Each season, each year, there's a new crop on it. We can then think about the mighty oak tree. I was at one just at Melford Hall not long ago, 800 to 1,000 years old. For me, for you, for our loved ones, 80 to 100 years if we're lucky. For these mighty oaks, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. We live on a different temporal scale. And for those oak trees, for example, the one overlooking Melford Hall, have seen new life within that hall year on year on year on year. And for that oak tree looking onwards to us, if we take the perspective of the tree, there's always new life. And they see us, just as we see the arable field bare, new life sprouts in the spring, grown crop, harvested, bare again. The oak looks on and sees the human living in the house in quite the same way. The house is full of life, the house is empty. New life comes, round and round, round and round it goes. And my point here is, just because the experience that we have is on the temporal level that it is, does not mean that is the understanding of existence from all perspectives, whether that be plant life, animal life, natural life. Look at Pangea forming. I don't know, millions of years ago, the earth crust changing and cycling around into the continents we have today. And given enough time, I'm sure there will be a new formation of the land mass and oceans that make up the world we live on. So to answer my question, or to answer the question, how do you know there's life after death? We know there's life after death because we see the cycles of life and death before our very own eyes. But we let our human arrogance and ignorance blind us to the very truth that there is birth, spring, life, summer, perhaps suffering, autumn, death, winter, rebirth, life again in the spring. There are cycles of life, and we're in one now. And you're right, it doesn't mean we know what happens when that end point is reached. But what we do know is there will be a rebirth. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today. There is life after death, and we know it by simply looking at arable land behind us. Perhaps looking at an oak tree growing strong and steady. And if you ever doubt yourself or the life that you're living, know that you're just in a cycle of life. And we can change those cycles. That's the beauty of humanity. We have free will and we have agency. And that's something that the natural world doesn't have, in my opinion. I'm sure there could be heavy philosophical and theological discussions around it. But the tree, in essence, the wheat behind me, doesn't have a choice in what direction it grows. It can't suddenly shoot new roots off and decide to grow on top of this mound right here. It must stay in the field. But as humans, we have free will and agency, and we can use our legs, our hands, our logos, our rationale, our mind, in order to think of the cycles that we inhabit and how we can change those cycles. I alluded to it a little earlier in the video. One way to change cycles that we wish to change to seek a better life, growth, development, whatever that may mean, is a very simple phrase. It's just one phrase. It's just one phrase, 4 words. Notice when, what happens next. Oh, 5 words. Notice when, what happens next. It's a very simple phrase. So I take a moment and I invite you. What behavior is it that you're looking to change? What behavior do you feel, if was different, would change your life dramatically? Have you got one? Okay. Next time that behavior emerges in your life, notice when, what happens next. The what happens next being the behavior. Let's take doom scrolling. What happened before doom scrolling? I got bored. Let's take smoking. What happened before the smoking? Notice when. I felt anxious. Let's take a depression, a sadness. A feeling, not a behavior, but we'll run with it. I feel a depression, a sadness. I notice what happened before that was I spent the whole day alone, perhaps on a screen. Perhaps that's something you're familiar with yourselves. So next time a behavior that you wish to maybe not remove, but loosen the shackles of within your life emerges, notice when, what happens next. And the cycle can move forwards as well. I notice when I don't get a good night's sleep. What happens next is that I am irritable the next day. Notice when I'm irritable the next day, what happens next? I don't get as much work done. I argue with the people closest to me. Notice when, what happens next. And we can use this very simple phrase as a phrase that all of us can use. All of us can use to digest and understand our experience of the world around us and break cycles down in order to grow and develop. And the reason we can do that is we have free will and agency. Free will and agency to choose where we grow, how we grow, and the pace we grow in. And if it's difficult to loosen some of these shackles of behaviors that bind us from time to time, these cycles keep popping up and popping up, you're not alone. Every one of us on this earth is within a cycle, whether that's just the cycle of our life, whether that's a cycle of positive behavior or negative behavior. We are all going through cycles, patterns and phases. And emotions are not static. We don't reach a state of happiness and stay that way forever. And likewise, it can be difficult to really hold at the time. We don't remain in a state of sadness forever either, or a state of anxiety. It can be easy to say, I wish I didn't feel. That way I wouldn't feel how I do now. But our feelings, our emotions, are information we use to relate with the world. If we're anxious, we know something frightening might be happening, and we may have to do something to maneuver ourselves into a safer place. Now, that's not to say that that process can become maladaptive. Our smoke detector can become uncalibrated with the reality of the world, specifically around trauma. I have a short lecture around that, so I won't go into too much detail. It's on the channel if you wish to view. And I don't want to make this too long, and perhaps I've jivered away enough. So a short synopsis. What are we talking about today? We're talking about cycles of life. We all go through them. Every single organism in the natural world goes through cycles. Don't beat yourself up if behaviors, emotions, or thought patterns re-emerge that you had felt you dealt with and were no longer a problem, like stinging nettles coming up on a lovely lawn. 2, we can identify cycles in our life with an easy phrase, really easy phrase. Notice when, what happens next. Notice when, what happens next. And we can do that with positive cycles, negative cycles, and understand our own personal process. With that very simple phrase, we can all do it. Perhaps write it down, stick it in your notebook. Cycles occur for all of us. Notice when, what happens next. And last of all, there is life after death. And we know that very simply by looking at any arable field. And we've all seen them. We all know the truth that in the winter, the arable field will be bare soil. And the summer will be a full crop. And that's what I want to leave you with. No, you are not alone in any struggling, any difficulties, any pain in your life, feeling that it won't end. And what I want to say is, there will be a moment where it doesn't feel that way. And that's all part of the cycle of life. Thank you very much for your time. Time is valuable. Just before we leave, what do you notice before a behavior that occurs in your life that perhaps you wish to change? Notice when, what happens next. Goodbye.